All right, let's dive into a biological puzzle that, let's be honest, pretty much everyone has experienced: swelling. What looks like simple puffiness is actually this incredible story of microscopic forces, all locked in a super delicate, high stakes balancing act inside your body.
I mean, really think about it. What's the link between a sprained ankle, a bee sting, and even something serious like heart disease? Well, they can all cause swelling, or what doctors call edema. So what is really going on just under our skin? Let's break it all down.
To really get a handle on swelling, we have to first appreciate the amazing system our body has for managing fluid. And it's not a static thing. It's this constant, dynamic process that's happening everywhere in your body all the time. Just try to picture your tiniest blood vessels, your capillaries, as these super sophisticated irrigation hoses. They've got to deliver water and nutrients out to the tissue cells, right? But they also have to pick up all the waste products. This constant back and forth, this exchange of fluid, has to be managed perfectly. If too much fluid leaves the vessel or not enough comes back in, well, that's when you've got a problem.
So what's controlling all this movement? What's the secret? The answer lies with four fundamental pressures we call the Starling forces. So let's meet the key players in this tiny, microscopic drama.
Okay, this table lays it all out. First, you've got capillary hydrostatic pressure, or PC. Just think of this as the push from your blood pressure, forcing fluid out of the vessel. Working against it is the interstitial hydrostatic pressure, or PI, which is a much smaller push from the tissue fluid trying to get back in. Then we have the pull forces. The big one is capillary oncotic pressure. It's like this magnetic pull from proteins, mostly albumin, that are inside the vessel, drawing fluid back in. And last, there's a weaker pull from any proteins that might be hanging out outside in the tissue.
So you can really picture the two opposing teams in this tug of war. On one side of the rope, the outward team. You've got the blood pressure pushing out and any tissue proteins pulling out. On the other side, the inward team. You've got the plasma proteins pulling fluid back in, plus that small tissue pressure pushing in. When you're healthy, these two teams are in a near-perfect balance. It's beautiful.
But what happens when that balance breaks? What happens when one team just completely overpowers the other? Well, that's exactly when we get edema.
So here's the bottom line. Edema is just the name for what happens when too much fluid builds up in that space between your cells. And it happens for one of two main reasons. Either the outward forces in our little tug-of-war get way too strong, or the body's backup plan, its drainage system, the lymphatics, gets clogged up.
And this framework is so powerful because it lets us understand pretty much every cause of swelling. We can basically group them all into four main categories based on which part of the system is failing. Let's walk through them one by one. First up, the push force just gets way too strong. If the blood pressure inside the capillary, that's our PC, shoots way up, it's going to physically shove more fluid out into the tissues than can possibly be pulled back in. The outward team wins by sheer brute force.
And this isn't some rare thing. It happens in really common clinical situations. With congestive heart failure, the heart just can't pump well, so blood backs up in the veins and jacks up that pressure. A deep vein thrombosis, or a DVT, is a literal clog in a vein that does the exact same thing. The system is it's overpressurized. All right, on to cause number 2. What if the push force is totally normal, but the pull force is just weak? This is what happens when you lose the proteins inside your blood vessels, mainly that superstar protein albumin. With fewer proteins, that inward pull, the oncotic pressure, plummets, and it just can't draw fluid back in effectively.
We see this in conditions like nephrotic syndrome, where the kidneys basically spring a leak and you lose tons of protein in your urine. Or in severe liver failure, where the liver, which is our body's main protein factory, just can't make enough albumin anymore. Less protein in the blood means less pull, and the fluid gets left behind in the tissues.
Now, our third cause is a bit of a different animal. Here, the problem isn't really the pressures, but the wall of the vessel itself. Imagine the capillary wall becomes leaky, like a garden hose that's full of tiny holes. Now, not only does fluid get out super easily, but those big proteins that are supposed to stay inside also leak out.
This is exactly what's happening during inflammation. Think about a bee sting or a bad burn. Your body releases chemicals that make the capillaries extra permeable. Now, that's good for letting immune cells get to the injury, but it also lets those plasma proteins escape, and they then pull even more water out into the tissue, causing that classic puffy swelling.
And that brings us to our fourth and final cause. You see, the body has this amazing backup system called the lymphatic system. It's like a storm drain, constantly collecting any extra fluid and protein from the tissues
and returning it to your circulation. But what happens if those drains get blocked? Well, if the lymphatic drains are blocked, that fluid has absolutely nowhere to go. It just backs up, leading to a kind of swelling we call lymphedema. This can happen from a nasty parasitic infection like filariasis, from a tumor that's physically pressing on the vessels, or very commonly after surgery where lymph nodes had to be removed.
So, there we have it. The 4 major ways this whole beautiful system can fail. Let's just take a step back and put it all together, because this framework gives you a really clear map for understanding almost any kind of swelling you'll ever see.
And here are those 4 mechanisms laid out perfectly. You've got increased hydrostatic pressure, that's our push problem, like in heart failure, then decreased oncotic pressure, the pull problem, from something like nephrotic syndrome. Then there's increased permeability, the leak, from inflammation, and finally a lymphatic block, like you'd see in filariasis. It's just a really powerful diagnostic map.
If you're going to boil everything we just talked about down to a single sentence, this is it. This is the one. Edema is about 2 things: the balance of forces getting tipped out of whack or the drains getting blocked. If you understand that, you understand the very essence of swelling.
So now you have the toolkit. The next time you see swelling, whether it's on yourself or somebody else, you can think like a physiologist. You can actually ask the question, what's the underlying mechanism here? Is it too much push? Not enough pull? Are the walls leaky? Or are the drains blocked? It's this simple framework that turns a really complex medical sign into a puzzle that you can actually start to solve.